Streaming on First Coast News Plus. This is First Coast News on your side. We begin with breaking news.
Well, thank you for joining us for First Coast News at noon. I'm Jessica Clark. Let's go to that breaking news. The state attorney's office is holding a news conference regarding a Jacksonville cold case. Agencies say they are providing a major update. So we are checking now. It doesn't seem like it has started just yet, but we will return when it does. Okay, so let's move to, well, it looks like they just walked in the door, doesn't it? So we're going to stop now and listen in. Okay, it appears that we are having somewhat of an audio issue. We will get that rectified, but first let's go over to meteorologist Robert Spetta with a look at the weather right now.
Hey, Jessica. Yeah, let's start off with a look at the tropics.
Yeah,
here.
let's talk about that.
You know, and I'm sure everybody, you've been hearing about this, these storms just offshore.
Yes.
How are they going to impact us, right?
How are they?
Well, at the very least, and this is the key thing, Sunday through about Tuesday, we're going to be looking at some rip currents out along the coast, increase in surf, maybe some coastal gusty conditions. That is at the very least. And the reason is because, well, we not only have one, but potentially.
With us today are Regional Operations Center Special Agent in Charge, Keisha Noss, Crime Lab Analyst Supervisor Marcy Scott, and Deputy Director of Forensic Services, Lee Clark. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement Lab has been at this since 1994. They've collaborated with us continuously since that time, recommending relevant forensic tests and advising us when new technologies were available that could help the investigation. They have conducted almost 200 separate tests in this case, and they have rendered 45 reports over the course of 30 years. They have been a real and true partner to us. Othram Labs in Woodlands, Texas. Incredible work with the very last bit of DNA we had left in this case to test. The Naval Criminal Investigative Services. Many agents with NCIS have dedicated efforts to this case. Thomas Simos, Tim Quick, and most recently, Katie Spina. Our team here at the State Attorney's Office, Investigator Casey Bennett and Investigator Billy Carlisle. Billy has worked this case for decades, even in retirement. Cody Taylor, who has proven invaluable in this most recent review and investigation, and Cindy Cribbs, who has also worked on this matter since the 2000s. Assistant State Attorneys Alan Mizrahi and Shay Plotkin, who will prosecute this matter. I want to recognize Ryan Bachman of Project Cold Case here also today. His nonprofit has been an important partner to us, to law enforcement, an advocate for families, and a resource to keep a spotlight on cold cases. Finally, and most importantly, the Liver Nash family, who live in Wisconsin. They're among the best families with whom our office has worked. They have remained patient, hopeful, and prayerful as we have sought justice for their daughter, Tina Liver Nash Himes. In 1994, their daughter, Tina, was murdered and sexually assaulted here in Jacksonville. She was just 20 years old, newly married, and 4 months pregnant. Just after 6 a.m. on April 17, 1994, law enforcement responded to a Mayport apartment where they found Tina stabbed to death on her bed. She'd been stabbed 27 times. Multiple areas of the apartment were set on fire and triggered the smoke alarm in the apartment and alerted neighbors. Tina's brother-in-law, Chad Hines, said he was asleep in the living room when he woke to the fires and extinguished them before he went into the bedroom to find Tina on her bed covered in blood. Chad Hines called 911. The investigation and evidence at that time pointed only to Chad Hines. Chad's brother and Tina's husband, Jeremy Hines, was on duty on a Navy ship at nearby NAS Mayport. Chad was in the apartment at the time of Tina's killing. He claimed to have been sleeping just feet away from where Tina was murdered when she was murdered. In 1996, a jury convicted Chad Hines of Tina's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. By the early 2000s, new DNA technologies had come online that would allow preserved evidence that had been collected in 1994 from Tina's body and her bed to be tested in a way that had not been available to law enforcement at the time of her murder. Using this advanced and more sophisticated technology, post-conviction testing on this evidence began. The story of the forensic evidence took shape. A DNA profile of an unknown man emerged. DNA from under Tina's nails, from hairs collected from her body, and from a semen stain on her sheets were that of a man who was not her husband and was not her brother-in-law, Chad. That DNA profile was uploaded into CODIS, a national DNA database. The unknown DNA profile ran weekly for years without a hit. No match. Investigators interviewed countless people associated in both large ways and small ways with Tina Hines. They collected DNA from each of those people and compared that DNA to this unknown DNA profile to no avail, no match. In 2007, based on this DNA evidence, the state of Florida dismissed the case against Chad Hines, but we continued to seek to determine the donor of the unidentified DNA. This DNA profile would remain unidentified for the next 15 years. In 2005, I was asked to oversee the post-conviction investigation and DNA submissions. I carried that responsibility through the case dismissal in 2007. When I returned to the state attorney's office in 2017, our goal to identify the man under Tina's nails on her body and in her sheets was a priority. In 2021, after the breakthrough in the Golden State Killer case, we sent, at the recommendation of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, what little DNA remained in this case to a lab in Texas whose work was known to be highly successful in the identification of individual profiles from minute amounts of DNA, which was the case here. A profile was developed and the lab began genetic genealogy searches. Through genetic genealogy, Othram Labs identified a likely match. Our detectives and forensic experts confirmed the match. Michael Shane Ziegler. Michael Shane Ziegler is now 52 years old. He was living with his mother outside of Atlanta, Georgia. He is a retired merchant marine. We learned that in 1994, Michael Ziegler was here in the Navy, stationed at Mayport aboard the USS Lady Gulf. We also learned this. He was not a stranger to Tina Hines. Michael Ziegler was her husband Jeremy's very close friend. In fact, he stood witness at their courthouse wedding just 5 months before Tina was killed. And though difficult to see, he's on the far right there, a picture taken at their courthouse wedding. For 3 decades, Ziegler remained under the radar, but his biological footprint endured. And with persistence and advancements in science, we finally caught up to him and caught him. On August 28th, this year, Alan Mizrahi presented this case to a Duval County grand jury. The grand jury indicted Michael Ziegler for the first-degree murder and sexual battery of Tina Hines. On September 4th, thanks to the good work of the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, the Clayton and Newton Counties Sheriff's Offices, the U.S. Marshals Regional Fugitive Task Force, and the Georgia State Patrol, Ziegler was arrested near his home in Covington, Georgia, without incident. He was returned here last week to Jacksonville, and today he sits in the Duval County Jail without bond. The trial team of Alan Mizrahi and Jay Plotkin will lead this prosecution moving forward. I'll turn the podium now over to Director Cayenne.
So good afternoon. I am Edmund Cayenne, the Director of Investigations and Homeland Security for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. This announcement demonstrates the strength of our partnerships. I am proud to stand here today with the State Attorney's Office and our JSO detectives, who have worked tirelessly for decades to bring answers to Tina Hines' family. It wasn't easy, but the men and women who carried this case never gave up. Now, 31 years later, and with the help of advanced DNA technology, we are able to announce this arrest. While Tina's life was tragically cut short, we hope this development brings some measures of peace to her loved ones. I want to personally thank the cold case teams both at JSO and at the State Attorney's Office. Standing with us today is JSO Detective Dennis Sullivan, who led the case for our agency. His persistence, professionalism, and dedication made this day possible. This remains an active case, so we cannot release every detail, but we are grateful to see Michael Ziegler finally held accountable for this horrific crime he committed. Thank you.
As Director Cayenne said, this is an active investigation. Obviously, this has been a very long journey, most especially for Tina's family. And for those who have worked tirelessly on this case, they have done so for one reason, and that was in the pursuit of justice. So today, we are one step closer to that goal, but this investigation does continue. It was important to apprise the public and you all of this development, but because this remains an active investigation, we will not be answering any questions at this time. I really appreciate you coming today to cover this important development in this case. Thank you very much.
We just heard a press conference about a cold case from 1994 in which a woman named Tina Hines was found murdered in her apartment in Mayport. And then her brother-in-law, Chad Hines, who was in the apartment, was eventually convicted of her murder and served time. But then there was some DNA evidence that still lingered from the case, and it was continued to be tested and tested and tested. 31 years later, there is now a new suspect. So Chad Hines, the brother-in-law, has been released because of this new evidence that points to a different person that Tina Hines struggled with and had DNA on her body and in her sheets. And that new person now, according to the state attorney's office, is Michael Ziegler. He lived in Mayport at the time, according to investigators, and he has been, the case before him went to a grand jury just last month. The grand jury indicted him, and the state attorney's office and investigators then went to Georgia and brought him here to Duval County, where he is in the Duval County Jail. Again, this is for the cold case murder of Tina Hines. She was only 20 years old and she was pregnant. She was stabbed 27 times. A cold case unraveling, according to the state attorney here in Duval County. We will continue to learn much more about this as the day progresses, I'm sure, but that is one heck of an update, and we are glad to bring that to you at the very top of our new newscast. Okay, let's continue with other news now. Jacksonville City Council's decision to cut property taxes is drawing concern from the city's police and fire unions. Our Kenzie Krieger joins us to show us how council is working to protect public safety funding moving forward.
The budget trims more than $13 million in property taxes, and union leaders say that this could hurt public